Man, the forest fire smoke is super thick today, but I'm gonna suck it up because we got a viewer request via email, and I love doing viewer request episodes, so I'm gonna stop what I'm doing and hop on the bike and do my best to answer this question. Now, I will admit, when this question came in, I had to look it up. And I don't mean to say that I had to look it up in German. I mean, that's no surprise. I have to look stuff up in German all the time. What I mean to say is when this question came in, I had to look it up in English because I actually wasn't sure. I don't remember the exact wording of the question. I'm going to put it up on screen. It was something like, can you please describe the similarities and differences between English and German when it comes to adjective word order? If there's more than one adjective in the sentence, how do you order those adjectives? In English, we have something called OSASCOMP, and I'm wondering if there's an equivalent to that in German. Now, my first reaction to that question was, what the heck is OSASCOMP?
OSASCOMP is a handy mnemonic to help people remember the order of adjectives in an English sentence. This is a very...
No, it's the wrong channel. OSASCOMP is a handy mnemonic to help people remember the order of adjectives in an English sentence. Now, with OSASCOMP, we break down all the adjectives in the language into one of 8 categories. The categories are, let's see if I remember this: opinion, size, age, shape, color, origin, material, and purpose. I think that's right. Now, let's step back for a second. You are never going to see a sentence in English with one of each of all 8 of those categories of adjectives. That's ridiculous. I mean, I'm sure it's possible to construct a sentence that has 8 adjectives in it, but it would be the most clunky sentence in the universe. Typically, an English sentence will not have any more than, let's say, 3 adjectives. Anything more than that, and the sentence starts to feel a little bit clunky and needs to be broken up into multiple clauses. But if you use, if you construct a sentence that has more than one type of adjective, it's a pretty good idea to follow OSASCOMP for ordering of those adjectives. Now, I want to stress before we start that OSASCOMP is not a rule in English. It's more of a guideline, but it's a pretty good guideline to follow. So, for example, if there's a house which is made of wood, it's old, and it's blue, most English speakers would say that is an old blue wooden house, because age comes before color, and color comes before material. If you put those adjectives into literally any other order, it's going to sound a little bit weird. You'll still be understood, probably, but it's going to sound a little bit off. You probably wouldn't say that is a wooden blue old house. Okay, I mean, it's still clear what you meant. It's not like you're not going to be understood, but it sounds a little bit odd. Now, it may be possible in English to put the adjectives into such a wrong order that it sounds like nonsense. I tried to think of an example of this. The closest I could come was to say something like, he drives a steel old car. He drives a what? A steel old car? Oh, you mean he drives an old steel car. Old steel car makes perfect sense to me. But steel old car makes my brain kind of stop in its tracks and have to go backwards and reparse what I just heard because I don't really understand that. It takes a second. Now, having said that, most of the time, I think, if you get the adjectives in the wrong, quote-unquote, wrong order, there's no official correct order because OSASCOMP is not a rule in English, but if you put the adjectives in the wrong order, it will sound a bit off, but most of the time you'll still be perfectly well understood, so it's a pretty minor mistake. But let's look at German. Is there an equivalent of OSASCOMP in German? I took a look around and I cannot find an official rule anywhere in the German language to describe that adjectives should be in a specific order. Word order in German, just in general, is more flexible than English, and it seems with adjectives, that's no exception. So it seems like you could put adjectives into pretty much whatever order you want in a German sentence. Now, having said that, I did anecdotally come across a few native speakers on a few different language learning forums who said that certain adjectival word orders sound better than others. Same as in English. A wooden blue old house just kind of sounds wrong. It hits the ears wrong. Similarly, in German, let's go with the old blue house as an example. I probably wouldn't say in German, das ist ein blaues altes Haus. I would probably say, das ist ein altes blaues Haus. But why? Well, maybe that's because I'm pulling my bias in from the English language when I'm forming German languages, but it just kind of sounds better to me. Now, would a native speaker agree with that, or are those two wordings perfectly interchangeable in German? I don't really know. This is where you kind of want a native speaker to weigh in to say what feels better. you know, you can't point to a specific part of the rule book and say that this phrasing is demonstrably better than that phrasing because of this particular rule of syntax in German. There is no such rule. So it comes down to a feeling, and that feeling is built up within native speakers anyway, through osmosis over time. Usually during childhood, you hear it a certain way so many times it just becomes second nature. For example, when I was asked this question, I had to look up OSASCOMP, and even though I couldn't have described that to you before this, as I was reading the description of OSASCOMP, I was kind of nodding my head like, yes, this makes sense to me. This knowledge is in fact in my head. It's just that I've never consciously thought about it before. That's the advantage of being a native speaker, is that you get that knowledge through osmosis over time. Now, there is no hard rule in German, so it comes down to a gut feeling, but I did find something that I thought was kind of interesting, and that is that if you have a group of things that all have an attribute in common, but you want to differentiate based on some attribute that they do not have in common, then the differentiating adjective will come before the common adjective. The common adjective will go with the noun. That probably sounds like complete gibberish, so let's look at an example to illustrate this point. Let's say we have a group of cars, and they're all sports cars. They're all really fast cars. That's what they all have in common. They're all fast, but they're all different colors. If I want to differentiate one in German, I could say, Ich mag das blaue schnelle Auto. And somebody else might say, nein, 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 ich mag das grüne schnelle Auto. Schnelle goes with Auto because all of the cars are fast. The differentiating adjective is the adjective of color. Now we can flip that around. Let's say we've got a group of vehicles that are all the same color, but they're all different sizes. Now the adjective of size is the differentiating adjective. So I could say, Ich mag das große blaue Auto, and somebody else might say, nein, 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 ich mag das kleine blaue Auto. But even that is not a rule in German. You don't have to follow that. And in the spoken language, you've got the option of using tone of voice to stress what you mean. For example, I could say, Ich mag das blaue schnelle Auto, or Ich mag das blaue schnelle Auto. By stressing one of those adjectives, I'm making it clear that that is the adjective that is important to me. That's the one I'm differentiating. But if there's no rule for this in the German language, then how do native speakers know how to order their adjectives? Well, again, it comes down to the osmosis that they have experienced in the German language, speaking that language their entire lives. So let's go back to the original question. Is there a German equivalent of OSASCOMP for describing the preferred order of adjectives in a German sentence? The straight up answer to that is no, there doesn't seem to be a hard rule in German. Just like in English, actually, OSASCOMP is not a rule in English, and there is no rule in German. It's more of a gut feeling type of thing. Some orderings will sound better than others. But let's take a step back and I'll give a somewhat more flippant answer to that question. Is there an equivalent of OSASCOMP in German? My answer to that is, it doesn't really matter. We are way down in the fine-grained nitty-gritty details of the language here, and I'm willing to go out on a limb and say that if you get this wrong, I'm going to put wrong in quotes there because there is no rule for this, so there is no officially wrong adjective order in German. But if you get this wrong in the sense of you form a sentence that doesn't sound quite right to a native speaker, I'm willing to bet that the vast majority of the time, you will still be understood. It might sound a little bit off, but it's going to be okay. You're going to be understood. So you have to ask, is this really worth stressing over? In my opinion, no. This is, I mean, unless you're at a very advanced level, if you're C2 in German, maybe you should start worrying about this, but if you're at the beginner to intermediate level of German, even high intermediate, I would say this is probably not worth stressing over. There are much more important things in German that you could stress over long before you get to adjectival word order. And yes, there may be the occasional case in German like the one I thought of in English. He drives a steel old car, where you form a sentence that's so odd it causes someone to have to stop and think about it. But I'm willing to bet most of the time, if you get this quote-unquote wrong, a German person probably wouldn't even bother to correct you because it's going to be pretty minor. It's going to be a very mild mistake. So don't stress about it too much. So, thank you for sending in that viewer request. I love doing viewer request episodes, and thank you for making me look something up in my own language, because it was kind of interesting to look that up and realize that, yes, okay, all this knowledge is in my head, but I've never consciously thought about it until now. It makes me wonder what else I know about the English language that I've never really taken the time to reflect on. So that'll do it for today. We will see you next time on Lernen und Fahren.